Conversation with Ron MacLean.
Welcome once again to In Conversation. On our show today, Akil Thomas and Sarah Nurse. Their roles in two fantastic hockey games, the gold medal final at the Pyeongchang Olympic Games in 2018 in South Korea, and of course the World Junior Championships this year, 2020 in the Czech Republic, are sort of the glittering apex of the iceberg of their hockey careers so far. And we'll explore the foundations of those icebergs and also talk about two of those fine hockey games. You know, before we get to that, though, Connor McDavid was on our last broadcast and talking about Colby Cave. A glowing set of remarks to Emily and to the families, and our worlds were shattered Saturday to learn that he'd succumbed to his event at the tender age of 25. And I can't shake what Connor said then and has been saying, and the whole hockey world is in pain. So we wanted to express our sorrow and just that idea of Connor's love and the community coming together to express their grief and their love. I remember Steve Nash at the Olympics in 2000. He's done a lot in his career. An interview he granted, it's one of my favorite things. And it's like that with Akil Thomas and Sarah Nurse. They've had fine careers, many great goals, but listening to their words and the way they teach their story is often my favorite aspect. And it reminds me of the great Paul Henderson used to say, the goal of one's life can have a couple of meanings.
Here's Akil Thomas stopping on a dime, scores! Well, he just keeps on piling up the highlight reel goals, doesn't he? Akil Thomas. Crossing goes for Akil Thomas. Oh, what a move by Thomas! He scores!
Now move to him. In comes Thomas with a chance. Moves it, but he scores! Akil Thomas has given Canada the lead with less than 4 minutes to go in the third period. His first goal of this World Junior Hockey Championship.
I don't want to be just like your typical NHL player. You know, I really want to strive to, first of all, make the NHL and then kind of, you know, be an impact in the community.
Sarah Nurse from Hamilton. Here's a great chance again. Oh, what a goal by Sarah Nurse. 20 seconds in the power play. There's a goal for Canada on the doorstep. Easy pickings for Sarah Nurse.
Young kids look up and see people that look like them and know that they can be like them. It's so incredibly powerful.
We're really excited and we're optimistic for the future of this game. We're going to do this together.
Akil Thomas, Sarah Nurse. Akil, you got me okay?
Yep.
And Sarah, you hear me?
We're here.
Oh, good. It's nice to hear you again. And I was saying in the preamble that listening to you is as much a thrill for me as watching you play the game of hockey. And you've done so much. But I'll tell you one thing. Your mental toughness has been put to an incredible test. Not only the dissolution of the CWHL, the loss of the World Championships, but now this COVID-19, which is so hard for an athlete. So just mentally, I'm really curious to see what you're feeling and what you're doing.
Yeah, I think as athletes, you know, we always want to be as productive as possible. And we always want to be thinking of solutions of what to do, how to get over this and that. And so it's been kind of interesting because all we can do is really sit and wait. And I think as we've been in this space, it's been so different. And it's been a unique experience to actually step back and be like, hey, I can do nothing and actually be productive. And so it's been definitely some challenging times, but you know, it's something that we're all in together. And so the future is going to be very interesting.
Well, go on about that. What are you doing? Fitness stuff or more just mental stuff?
I think a little bit of both. Obviously, being an athlete, going to the gym and working out and playing hockey, like that's our good headspace. That's where we feel the best. And I think so. I've been working out because honestly, I've been bored. But I've also been doing things that I don't usually get to do. You know, I love doing yoga and meditation. I actually taught myself in high school how to play the piano a little bit, so I've been jumping back on that train. Been doing a little painting, just things that keep you in a good headspace and calm your mind. I think that's been really, really crucial for me.
That is fantastic. Akil, how about you?
Yeah, obviously I have a clothing business, so things have been really, really busy so far, which is kind of surprising just because of, the season we're in now. But I've just been really busy with that and been trying to, do things like learning how to cook a little bit more, and I'm taking Spanish classes, so I'm keeping busy pretty good.
Why Spanish?
Well, I grew up in Florida, so there's a lot of Spanish people down there, and I kind of knew a little bit when I was younger, and then I kind of, moved to Toronto and kind of lost it a bit, and I took it again in high school and learned a lot again, and now I don't really know much, so I figured I just want to do something during this quarantine and learn the language. So I might as well learn a language that I'm pretty familiar with.
I do want to talk to you a little bit about your father and mental toughness as well, but Zale Apparel, Z-A-L-E or Z-A-L-E if you're watching stateside, that's a little balance in your life, Akil. And I wonder if you recognize that or even thought that would be a good thing to have in your back pocket going along with your hockey career.
Yeah. The last couple of years I've just kind of seen it as kind of a hobby I do on the side. And, now I'm spending, hours a day like working on it, and now I'm thinking, it's going to be pretty big. It's not going to be a hobby anymore, and it's more of a job now. And it's grown so much in the last year. It's been nuts. So it's actually something that one day can hopefully be a big part of my life.
It's really impressive. Did you have a slogan or a saying that made you? Or was it just the good fabric and the good stitch work?
Yeah, no, it's more on just the origin of the name and the logo. My mom's from Barbados, and my logo was a trident, and obviously there's a trident on the Barbados flag, and the word Zale means power of the sea. And I grew up in Florida, always being in the ocean and going to Barbados on vacation and being in the ocean for 8 hours a day there. So I just kind of found a connection with the sea, and I just found that the synergy between the two kind of was a cool fit.
Okay, Sarah, let's start to go down the path of these big games that you've been in, whether it's the All-Star in St. Louis or, of course, Pyeongchang. And clearly Akil's story to score the game-winning goal at Czech is unbelievable story. Yours, you had the game winner in the preamble versus the United States in Pyeongchang. I'd love to know your mental state going into that game, what you felt after scoring that goal, and then we'll move to the final itself. But first, the 2-1 winner.
Yeah, that game was so intense because obviously we're at the Olympics and then we're finally playing our rivals, which were the United States. And so as we went into that game, there were a little bit of nerves, but it was more excitement because, those are the games you dream of playing in. And so going into that game, it was trusting all the preparation that we'd put in as a team. And I think that was one of our best games of the tournament. Going in and scoring that goal, it's actually funny. If you listen to the audio somewhere, like you could probably hear a coach yelling at us to change my line. And so I was just trying to get the puck on net, get a nice whistle, and then go change. And I actually didn't see the puck go in the net. I saw it come out the backside. And so I was like, no way did that just go in the net. And I saw my teammates, like their faces were just going absolutely insane, and the building erupted. And so that was a pretty cool moment. It was pretty cool to see my parents on TV afterwards celebrating. My mom was like bawling her eyes out. And so that was such a cool moment for all of us to share. But yeah, definitely one of my most memorable moments.
You wouldn't know a mom bawling her eyes out, would you, Akil? Hey, listen, I'll tell you a story before you tell yours. And you've told it beautifully on Spittin' Chicklets and on Soul and Ice with Kwame Mason and Elijah Roberts. But I just remember in 1985 World Championships, Connor McDavid's agents, Jeff Jackson, he had just killed a penalty against the Czechs on New Year's Day. He came to the bench and he's all out of breath. The coach, Terry Simpson, says, "You sit. We'll put a defenseman out on the wing with Adam Creighton and Brian Bradley." And that guy was Wendell Clark. Clark went on the ice and he scored, just like you did. But so why don't you tell your story first about this divine intervention or feeling you had and the fact that Dale Hunter made the call to put you into that central role?
Yeah, it was a weird day overall for me. I felt so cool, and usually before even random games, I'm like throwing up and stuff. I have issues with anxiety before games and stuff. So for some reason, I was really cool and collective that day, and I just had a good feeling. I had good vibes going into the game, and obviously it was a really up and down game. We were trailing obviously, and we ended up tying it. And I remember just in the third, I obviously wasn't playing that much, but I just kept on telling myself, like, I'm going to get one more shift in this game, and when I have that shift, like, I have 40 seconds to score. And so I just kept on telling myself I was going to score. Like, I wish there was a camera on me or something during that period, because I was literally like telling myself that on the bench. It was kind of weird, and it's kind of something cheesy that my mom kind of taught me growing up, was to speak things into existence. And I was like, I'm going to try it right now and see if it works. So I kind of, when you play for a coach, you kind of know when he's about to make a line combination for going out when the lines are all juggled around. And I kind of just felt that as I was standing up, and I felt his name's kind of on my jersey, and I had a weird feeling he was going to call me. And when he called me, I kind of was like, no way, I'm going to score this shift, like I'm going to do it. And obviously I went out there, and I don't even remember how the play started or anything. I just remember that puck kind of getting sat like right in front of the goalie, and my first thought was, he's definitely going to come out and poke check it, but I had too much speed, I think, for that, and I just kind of went out. I went backhand, and obviously worked out, and I just can't really describe the feeling I got after that. It's crazy.
You say you didn't play a ton, but when I watched that game, you had a great penalty kill in the first period, shot block, and you cleared. It was an amazing play, actually. You'll recall it, I'm sure. And then in the second period, twice, the puck was like presenting to you. If you were a lefty like Sarah, I think you'd have had 2 goals earlier in the game. Would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, so I remember there's a puck that came out in the slot, and so Raphael Lavoie was kind of facing the net, and then the puck came behind him, and he grabbed it, but I was behind him, so I grabbed it. And I remember we both held on to the puck, and we got back to the bench, and we're like, damn, we should have left it for each other or whatever. And I remember kind of, in the locker room thinking I could have scored there. That could have been my moment, but I was like, stick with it. Maybe there's something coming, and maybe you're not meant to score that goal. And so when I scored that goal, I remember the first guy who I saw was Raphael Lavoie after I scored. So it's just kind of cool how that kind of works out like that.
Yeah, that's neat. And Sarah, when you listen to that, I'm sure it gives you chills. And you've been in these big games. Now take me to the pressure of the final in Pyeongchang and compare it, if you will, to skating in the elite women's 3-on-3 at the AllStar Game in St. Louis, because there were a lot of the high stakes for that, I think, would have been pressure. Was it?
Yeah, obviously in Pyeongchang, you're in the Olympic gold medal game, and that's the game that you've watched on TV for years and years and years. And so to finally be there was so surreal. But again, that day was so strange in the sense that we were actually there, and we had so much confidence in ourselves. And even to this day, I think if we would have won a couple more overtimes, I think we would have ended up winning the game. We had so much confidence in ourselves, and unfortunately it didn't go our way in the shootout, but we've taken a lot from that game, and we've definitely grown. And I think, honestly, this is kind of funny, but I think I felt more pressure, and I think I can speak on behalf of a lot of the girls in that elite 3-on-3 game at the NHL AllStar Game. Just because, the Olympic stage, that's our stage, that's our platform. And so for the NHL to bring us in and give us the platform that we really needed this year for women's hockey, and to play in our own event at the NHL AllStar Game, was incredible. But it was a lot of pressure because we weren't just playing for ourselves. We weren't just playing for our countries. We were playing for kind of the future generations of our sport. And so there was definitely a lot of pressure riding on that game. Obviously playing Canada, USA, it was a huge rivalry. So when we ended up winning, coming into the locker room after that, we actually had split sides of the locker room. And it was a little awkward because we wanted to celebrate, and the US girls didn't look too happy on their end. But no, that game was a lot of fun, and we're so grateful that we had that opportunity.
It was lovely to see the respect there, Akil, and you. So maybe go on about that.
It'd definitely be, a different feeling and kind of coming to an NHL All-Star event. And obviously she was saying that, she was playing for not only themselves, but, the future of, women's hockey. And obviously that's been making, a lot of moves, I think, in the last few years, and it's going to good things. So I think, obviously them participating in that event was huge for the future.
You've both broken some barriers down in your careers. And Sarah, I'll start with you. Did you ever, I remember your father, Roger, saying at one point, or maybe Michelle mentioned it, but it wasn't always a gimme that you made all the 4 nations or all the international teams. Did you feel like maybe you were a little invisible to scouts and GMs early on, or did you always never have that sensation? You were just fine with how things were evolving?
Oh gosh, I think I was beyond invisible for a couple of years. My first I made it 1 4 Nations team on the senior team. And then my first major event was actually the Olympics. So I had been passed over for my entire college career for the senior team. I always compare myself to one of my best friends, Emily Clark, and she had kind of a linear path. She's worked so hard to get to where she is, but she was selected for all of the events, and whereas I was left at home. And so that was definitely tough, but it definitely makes you realize that even though we may have the same goal, everybody's path, everybody's journey is so incredibly different. And it doesn't really matter how you get there, but as long as you get there. And so it's been a journey for sure.
Do you have a tip on the resilience? Was there something that helped you overcome that or use it as a weapon?
I think it's very personal in the sense of just goal setting. A lot of people have to set little goals in order to get their big goal, whereas I'm the type of person that I need that big goal. And it kind of doesn't matter what I do and the steps I take. I'm not really super into routines, but I just need that big goal to keep pulling and to keep looking to, because I know that eventually I'm going to get there, but I just have to figure out how. And so I think it's very personal in that goal setting essence.
For you, Akil, it would be going 51st in the NHL Draft, when clearly you'd had a great season. You're projected first round, and it doesn't happen. And that first day at the draft is, that's all-star, and then it turns into everything else. Didn't happen for you on the all-star day, and it could have really set you back and eaten you up. It didn't, it appears, or did it?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Florida where, maybe the competition isn't as great. So early on, I kind of felt a little bit different from my peers, and I felt like, I was advanced, and I did feel like one of the better players in Florida. And, the big test was moving to Toronto and seeing how I compared to those guys. And I did really well. I felt like one of the better players in Toronto as well. And, obviously I thought I had a good draft year with the Ice Dogs. And, I was ranked first round pretty much everywhere. I didn't really see any stating that I was going second round. So, I was really excited, and, I was excited for my friends who were getting drafted as well. And, the toughest part was just having so much family there that we're kind of planning on me going in the first day, because that's just what we were told. And we had plans for the day after. Some of my family only booked their trip for like the first day. So I just kind of felt like I let everyone down. And that's just kind of my first thought and stuff. And obviously you dream of going first round, and, when you think you are, it's pretty tough when you don't. But in the same way, it definitely made me a way better person, and I'll never be complacent again, and I'll always be looking for that edge, because I really want to prove a lot of people wrong.
Sean Jersey played for Guelph. He used to say, "I want to prove the people who believe in me right." I always like you kind of had a funny positive spin on that resilience that you require. Khalil, your dad, sir, you'll find this story interesting. Your family, I mean, you can go to a million different people in your family for advice on these issues. It's Khalil for Akil. And you told a great thing to Ryan Whitney and R.A. and Paul Bissonnette on Spitting Chicklets about him after his career, the hard thing about transitioning and depression. And I just love to know about your dad. You obviously admire him greatly, and I think your mental toughness is still his, even if he had that transitioning difficulty. Yeah,
like you said, my dad was a big part of my life, and he grew up, I guess he grew up not really playing AAA. He didn't really have enough money for AAA, and so the fact that he played AA and made the AHL was kind of like making the NHL for him. He was very happy about that, and he obviously made a living playing hockey in the South, just grinding and try to get up to the bigger leagues and stuff. But no, I love the way I grew up. I grew up traveling from city to city every few years, and I loved it. I loved being in new arenas. I loved coming to the rink with my dad instead of going to daycare and all that stuff. And obviously came to a point in time where he had to retire, and I didn't really understand what he was going through at the time, but he definitely had a tough time adjusting to life after hockey, and obviously he chose the pro route. He didn't go to school, and so he didn't really have anything to fall back on after. And that's just like one of the first things I learned when I started hockey was, you definitely gotta have something to fall back on. And I actually made a promise to my parents that I would get a degree in something, whether or not I'd play in the NHL or not. So definitely going to keep that promise with them, and just kind of learn off my dad. And obviously I started Zale, and it's already becoming something big. So hopefully already learned off my dad.
It's incredibly important. Zdeno Chara has his real estate license. Like a lot of players took lockouts or other situations and found something so that they didn't live in their head and hockey alone. Sarah, your family, you take this anywhere you want, but for me, I just saw Steve Staios walking his bulldog yesterday, and obviously his captain with the Hamilton Bulldogs is a pretty close friend, your brother Isaac, and your other brother. I just love the hockey family. How did a lacrosse daughter, or the daughter of a lacrosse star, end up being one of three great hockey players in one family?
Yeah, I mean, my dad loved lacrosse. That was his, love, but he never got to play hockey when he was a child. And so I think he kind of channeled that through us. He also came from the Caribbean when he was very young, and he thought that every Canadian kid should know how to skate and swim. And so as soon as I was able to, he brought us out to the local pond and put me on little double blades and let me skate. And I just loved skating. And so naturally that led to hockey. And I just continued playing because it was kind of the sport that I was best at. And so even though my dad loves lacrosse, still referees lacrosse to this day, we played for a couple of years when we were younger, but it was so hot in the summer, hot and sweaty and all the equipment. It wasn't really my thing. But he's always loved hockey, and I think that he really projected that onto the three of us growing up.
Why don't we close on just your roles as ambassadors? Both of you. Sarah, I'll start with you, but you've done some outreach with Kim Davis recently. Certainly you'll be a guest on Soul and Ice with Kwame and Akil and Elijah. I just love to know, like Keandre Miller, he went through his little ordeal on the somebody bombed a Zoom chat that he was doing for the New York Rangers, and it keeps surfacing that you're going to have to address that subject in lockstep with the career that you just want to have. You do a great job of it, Sarah. Your advice on that and how you do that.
I think it's a difficult situation because, we've had these Zoom calls and we've had these video chats for weeks now, and there have been security breaches. And I think that we need to acknowledge that and take steps to prevent it. Obviously in that moment, I definitely feel for him because in a way you have to have that quote unquote professional response and kind of act like, hey, everything's okay. But in the same vein, you can't act like everything's okay. You need to really address that and say, hey, this is not okay, and there's no space for this in this sport. I've actually spoken to Kim Davis on a call a couple weeks ago, and she took that attack personally. And so it definitely reassures me for the future and that we have somebody like her in our corner so high up in the NHL because it's not okay, and it continues to need to be addressed. And I think that's the saddest part about it, but I think we're taking steps to really eradicate that.
Akil, you've talked to, obviously, Keandre, Wayne Gretzky did. Kwame always teaches me this, in terms of trying to be an ally in a discussion, understand the subject and take the struggle as if it's your own. But even though you feel the pain, don't think it's about you, right? So I love what Kwame teaches me. And again, you were great to Keandre, who's a defenseman like your dad, and maybe you will be one day if you get your wish. But go on. I know you love D's, but go on. Just your thought on that, and we'll call it.
Yeah, well, my original thought was, you could kind of see that he feels uncomfortable just from the video, and I felt for him for sure because obviously he's in an interview and he has to kind of play along like everything's fine, and for that to happen, it's very tough. And I give him credit for that. It's pretty tough to do, staying professional and stuff. So kudos on that. But at the end of the day, like Keandre just wants to play in the NHL one day, and obviously he was asked to do that. So I just find it so disappointing that it's just a young kid, probably 19 or 20, who wants to play in the NHL, and someone has to do that. It's not necessary. There's no place for it, and I don't know what type of person would do that. So hopefully, out of this, I think more awareness will be. Obviously, everyone will be more aware of this stuff, and hopefully, I can kind of get out of the game that way.
Well, congratulations on the Los Angeles Kings. You got a great city to go play in, a great organization. You will be, I was listening to you talk about scouting people like Nazem Kadri, who brings that spit to the game. And I really think that's important. A 30-goal guy that, and you don't have to drop the gloves as often anymore. So you can cause trouble, like Matthew Tkachuk's good at it, but he'll still fight. Anyway, be great. You're going to have a great career in the NHL, and you're going to be wonderful with your Zale Apparel. And Sarah, what can I say? It's always a pleasure. Love to your family, and thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Be sure to join us Wednesday, 7 ET, 4 Pacific. Louis and Jake DeBrusk are my special guests, and we'll talk a lot about the late Colby Cave of the Edmonton Oilers, the 25-year-old. We'll celebrate Colby's life. Our song lyric tonight, and the sun went down as I crossed the hill. Town lit up, and the world got still. From learning to fly, the great Tom Petty. Till Wednesday, for all of us, thanks for listening and watching. So long for now.